In the heart of the night, when the world was wrapped in darkness, the highway stretched endlessly ahead. It was a lonely road flanked by thick woods that seemed to swallow sound and light. The only company for miles was the rumble of the truck's engine and the occasional flicker of headlights from passing cars. For Jake, a seasoned trucker, this was just another night on the job. Jake had been driving for over a decade, navigating the twisting roads and vast stretches of America. He knew every shortcut, every diner that served the best coffee, and every rest stop with a clean bathroom. But tonight felt different. The air was thick and heavy, almost electric, as if the very atmosphere was charged with something sinister. As he drove, he fiddled with the radio, searching for a station that would break the silence. Static filled the cab, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through his bones. He finally settled on a late-night talk show, the host's voice a comforting presence in the dark. They were discussing urban legends, tales of haunted highways and ghostly hitchhikers. Jake chuckled to himself, dismissing the stories as mere entertainment. But as he drove deeper into the night, a chill crept over him. The trees loomed closer, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers reaching out to grab him. He shook his head, trying to dispel the unease that settled in his gut. It was just his imagination, he told himself. Just another night on the road. Hours passed, and the radio host had moved on to a story about a trucker who vanished without a trace. The tale sent a shiver down Jake's spine. He glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. He was miles away from the nearest town, and the darkness felt more oppressive than ever. He needed a break, a chance to stretch his legs and shake off the creeping dread. Pulling into a small rest area, he parked the truck and stepped out into the cool night air. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. He walked to the edge of the lot, looking out into the woods. They seemed alive, whispering secrets he couldn't quite hear. As he turned to head back to the truck, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, shrouded in shadow. Jake squinted, trying to make out the details. It was a woman, her hair long and wild, her clothes tattered and dirty. She stared at him, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Hey," Jake called, his voice echoing in the stillness. "You need a ride." The woman didn't move. She just stood there staring. Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. There was something wrong about her, something unsettling. He took a step closer, but she suddenly turned and disappeared into the woods. "Wait," he shouted, but it was too late. She was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Jake shook his head, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. Maybe she was just a lost hiker, he thought. He climbed back into the truck, locking the door behind him. As he resumed his journey, the radio crackled back to life. The host was recounting another story, this one about a trucker who picked up a hitchhiker, only to have the passenger vanish before reaching their destination. Jake's heart raced. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman sitting in the back seat, but the cab was empty. The road stretched on, and the night deepened. Jake's eyelids grew heavy, and he fought to stay awake. He turned up the radio, hoping the noise would keep him alert. But just as he began to feel the rhythm of the road beneath him, the lights of the truck flickered. The engine sputtered, then roared back to life. Jake's stomach dropped. He pulled over, heart racing, and turned off the engine. Silence enveloped him again. He sat in the dark, listening to the night. Then he heard it, a soft tapping like fingernails against glass. He turned slowly, his breath caught in his throat. There she was, the woman from before, standing by the passenger window. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "Let me in," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. "What do you want?" he managed to say, his voice trembling. "Help me," she pleaded, her eyes wide with desperation. "Please." He hesitated, torn between fear and a strange sense of compassion. But something deep inside him screamed to drive away, to leave this nightmare behind. He pressed the gas pedal, but the engine roared to life and stalled again. Panic surged through him. "Please," she cried, her voice rising. "I need you." Jake's instincts kicked in. He slammed the truck into gear and sped away, leaving the woman behind. As he drove, he glanced in the mirror, half expecting to see her chasing after him. But the road was empty, the trees standing silent and still. Hours passed, but sleep was impossible. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on him. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, and every rustle of leaves sent his heart racing. He pulled into another rest area, hoping to find some solace in the light. But the moment he stepped out of the truck, he felt the weight of eyes upon him. The rest area was deserted, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows. He walked toward the bathroom, desperate for a moment of normalcy. As he approached the door, he froze. There, scribbled on the wall in dark red paint, were the words, "She's coming for you." Jake's breath hitched in his throat. He turned to run, but the woman stood there, blocking his path. Her hair hung in wild tangles, and her eyes were dark voids that seemed to pull him in. "Why won't you help me?" she asked, her voice a haunting echo. "Get away from me," Jake shouted, backing away. He stumbled over a rock and fell to the ground, scrambling backward as she advanced. "I'm lost," she said, her tone shifting from desperation to something colder. "You can't leave me here." Jake scrambled to his feet and ran back to the truck, fumbling with the keys as he tried to unlock the door. The woman's laughter echoed behind him, a chilling sound that sent shivers down his spine. He finally managed to get the door open and jumped inside, slamming it shut. He locked the doors, his heart racing. The engine roared to life, but as he turned to drive away, the headlights illuminated the woods. The woman stood at the edge, her face twisted into a grotesque smile. "Where will you go?" she taunted. "You can't escape me." Jake's hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel. He slammed the gas pedal, and the truck lurched forward, tires screeching against the asphalt. He didn't look back, didn't dare to see if she was following. The road blurred past him, a dark ribbon stretching into the unknown. But no matter how fast he drove, he could still feel her presence lurking just beyond the reach of the headlights. The shadows seemed to crawl closer, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. As dawn began to break, the first light of morning seeped through the trees. Jake's heart raced, hope flickering within him. Maybe he had escaped her. Maybe the sun would chase away the darkness that had haunted him all night. But as he rounded a bend, the road opened up to a clearing. In the center stood an old, abandoned gas station, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. The sight sent a chill down his spine. He had seen this place before. In a dream he couldn't quite remember. He pulled over, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that settled over him. He stepped out of the truck, the cool morning air biting at his skin. The gas station was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the distant rustle of leaves. As he approached the building, he felt a strange pull, as if something was drawing him closer. The door creaked open, revealing a dark interior filled with shadows. He stepped inside, heart pounding, and immediately felt a sense of foreboding. The walls were lined with old photographs, faded images of people who had once visited the station. Their faces seemed to watch him, their eyes filled with sorrow. In the corner, a dusty old jukebox stood silent, its lights flickering like dying stars. Jack turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind him. Panic surged through him as he rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped. "Help me," a voice whispered from the shadows. He turned, and there she was again, the woman from the woods. But now she looked different. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken, as if she had been drained of life. "Why are you doing this?" Jake shouted, backing away. "I'm not the one who did this," she said, her voice low and haunting. "You left me behind. You chose to run." Noah yelled, shaking his head. "I didn't know. I didn't want to leave you." A cold smile spread across her face. "But you did. And now you're just like me." The room began to spin, shadows closing in around him. He stumbled backward, trying to escape, but the wall seemed to shift, trapping him in a labyrinth of darkness. The photographs on the walls began to change, their faces morphing into twisted versions of the woman, their mouths open in silent screams. "Join us," she whispered, her voice echoing in his mind. "You can't escape your fate." Jake's heart raced as he felt the walls closing in. He fought against the darkness, but it wrapped around him like a vice. Desperation clawed at him, and he screamed, hoping someone would hear him. But the only answer was silence. In that moment, Jake understood the road he had traveled, the choices he had made, they had led him here. The woman wasn't just a ghost, she was a part of him now, a shadow of his own fears and regrets. As the darkness consumed him, he realized there was no escape. The long haul had come to an end, and he was trapped in a nightmare of his own making, forever lost on the highway of despair.